Hello, welcome to this presentation on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and how it relates to the global supply chain. My group is the TIPI's Operation Managers. We are comprised of 5 members: Safeya Siddig, Giovanni Houssou, Schultz, Wesley Ittner, and myself, Joseph Schuessler. All right, to start off, Safeya is going to talk to us about the supply chain issues from this conflict.
Hi, we are TIPI's operation managers, and here we will be discussing the impact of the Russia-Ukraine conflict on global supply chain shortages. I am Safeya, and I'll be starting off with introducing the issues the war brought up on the global supply chain. After the 2020 COVID-19 global pandemic, the global supply chain was already crippling. However, this was not the worst of the deteriorating global supply chain. At the beginning of 2022, 2 years after the global pandemic, Russia launched dozens of missiles into Ukraine, thus igniting the Russia-Ukraine war. This was the start of what was to be something very detrimental to the global supply chain, possibly even more than the pandemic. Although many would not assume that a lot of the necessary resources the world relies on would stem from these two countries, this thought was vividly debunked as the 2 months went by and shortages began to appear. For starters, Europe has an over-reliance on Russia for natural gas and crude oil, which would lead to Europe looking elsewhere for oil, thus increasing oil prices. Additionally, both Russia and Ukraine serve as major agricultural commodities. This serves as an issue as both Russia and Ukraine provide more than 25% of the world's trade in wheat. With a shortage of wheat comes a shortage of grains that the global population relies on daily. Russia is also a major global exporter of fertilizer, thus, supply chain shortages and restricted access lead to negatively impacting crop yields globally.
All right, now Giovanni is going to tell us more about the supply chain issues as it relates to technology.
Hi, my name is Giovanni Houssou, and I will further elaborate on the supply chain issue, mainly surrounding technology. So, Ukraine supplies roughly 50% of the world's neon gas, which is used to produce semiconductor chips. And so, corporations and governments are struggling to find alternative supplies to make them due to the supply chain shortage. This is important because these technologies are very important for developed countries as they are needed for electronics that are produced. For example, phones, cars, home appliances like fridge, for example, all use semiconductor chips. And due to the sanctions on Russia, also gas prices have risen dramatically, which has increased freight costs, and this is affecting companies, which is leading to shorter lead times. The China-Europe routes have also been blocked, and it is a major route for exporting to different countries. And this is affecting people on global scales, especially the less developed countries. All of this is added on top of the COVID-19, which has already been around, and it is showing us how valuable it is to be prepared for supply chain irregularities, as most countries were not, if not all countries, were not prepared for the supply chain issues that would come with COVID and then the Russia and Ukraine war. Thank you.
All right, now Cal is going to tell us a little bit about the cause and effects of the conflict on the supply chain.
Now I will talk about the cause and effect of the oil crisis. The crisis all started when Ukraine and Russia began conflict. Russia was put under sanctions, and the stockout probability increased very quickly for oil. This means that the demand exceeded the supply in many cases around the world. Demand remained the same during this conflict as people were living their normal lives around the world, but supply drastically decreased. As simple economic states, as supply decreases, price increases. So basically, all other suppliers around the world that supplied oil were able to sell their products at much higher prices because of the lack of supply. Gross profit margins during this period increased drastically for all the other oil suppliers. To respond to the oil shortages, the Saudi Arabian government used a strategy called line balancing to produce more oil. They reduced processing times to produce more oil for the world. Saudi Arabia is the world's largest oil supplier and has major control on the world's oil market. Saudi Arabia boosted their oil output to over 12 million barrels per day using this line balancing strategy.
All right. Now Wes is going to tell us about supply shortages.
Hi, my name is Wes, and the supply shortages associated with the Russia-Ukraine conflict connect to the topic operations management in a few diverse ways. Firstly, many of the operations being affected by the supply chain disruptions are lean operations. Lean operations have the goal of eliminating waste from the system. Less inventory and shorter flow times are hallmarks of this kind of operation. In the 1990s, many industries adopted lean manufacturing processes to capitalize on these competitive advantages. Currently, the lack of safety stock present in these lean operations have led to shortages from the halted production and delivery of products being caused by the war in Ukraine. An example of some effects that supply chain shortages give off come from the article Russia-Ukraine War Impact on Supply Chains and Inflation. And in this article, it states that supplier delivery times of manufacturers have been slowing for over 6 years as of April and slowing at a faster rate since October 2020. This suggests continued long waiting times for products. Services providing industries have been slowing for 35 months and slowing at a faster rate since February 2021. The Russia-Ukraine war will aggravate already strained logistic routes in the Black Sea. These supplier delivery times could be slowing at faster rates because of many different reasons, such as it being a labor management issue. By putting a large load of work on one resource and not evenly spreading it out, it could create a large bottleneck resource in the oil supply production. Another reason could be the transportation routes being disrupted by the war. This supply shortage is happening. Since the supply shortage is happening, it is causing inflation because these supply disruptions cannot keep up with the demand in the US, which are causing oil prices to rise higher than ever.
All right. Now I will be telling you about the bullwhip effect and how it relates to this conflict. The bullwhip effect describes the tendency for demand to become more volatile at higher levels in the supply chain. Now, Joachim Arts, an associate professor at the Luxembourg Center for Logistics and Supply Chain Management, warns us that a bullwhip effect is likely to occur if changes in supply chain sources are not coordinated carefully, saying, if it isn't coordinated carefully, it could lead to all kinds of bullwhip effects throughout global supply chains, speaking on switching modes or sources of inputs for commodities. Now, overreactive ordering caused by the shock of these shortages caused by the invasion of Ukraine may cause a bullwhip effect that exacerbates this already strained supply chain. Forecasting is another part of understanding today's war-related supply shortages, especially concerning food. Forecasting is one of the inventory management capabilities, meaning that is a tool used to manage inventory by many operations. Chris Mejia Argueta, director of the MIT Scale Network in Latin America, advocates for using analytic skills to forecast food inventories to avoid future food shortages. Forecasting demand will be essential in getting deliveries of Ukraine's primary commodity exports of wheat, sunflower oil, and barley back to normal, now that the Russian blockade has been somewhat alleviated. All right. Thank you for listening to this presentation by Tippy's operation managers. We hope you learned a lot. Have a good night and thank you.